little quick synopsis of last week's game. Obviously, we won the game, and then as Al Davis would put it, just win, baby. And so that was big, but it was not really to our standard. I don't think any of our players would tell you it was. We did some really good things. We did some really, really good things. It was a very talented young man that was taking the snap, and he was very accurate. The receivers did a good job, and we had to retool some things. So we got together as it was going. It's kind of hard completely to get everything retooled on the sideline, but we got most of it done at halftime, and thought the guys really responded hard. I thought that there were some key fourth down stops and some forced field goals, and that's you'd like to not even be in a position to have to force field goals, but if field goals are much better than touchdowns, and obviously in that game it proved out to be so. But what it did is it gave us an opportunity to get their attention. It gave us an opportunity to make sure that we could recenter ourselves, to go back to what got us where they are, and that's been a very good positive for this week of almost going back and not starting over, because you can't do that. It doesn't exist in this world. But recentering what our priorities are, and so gave us an opportunity to do that. We did that. As far as this week goes, we have to switch gears a little bit. The team we're playing is very well coached. They've got good, solid players, good players. They've got good players in key positions, and they do what they do, and that is run the ball as effectively in terms schematically as you can do it. I mean, they get a lot of hats in the gap, the extra gap, and so we're going to have to really fit the run very well and play with great effort and tackle well.
Was there concern about the tackling Saturday?
Well, yeah.
There were more missed tackles than in most games.
Yeah, you're correct, and I think that came from when you put yourself in a position that you're playing that many plays, then you get fatigue, and we can't allow that to happen, and that occurred. I will say this, because I'm saying it in a positive, there were certain guys that that was not an issue, and so there were some guys that played really good and tackled well the whole game, and more than not, but there were some things we had to clean up there. Yeah, but when you play that many snaps, and when I say but, that's not a but as an excuse, but when you play that many snaps, you put yourself in a situation that you got to turn it up a notch.
How do you look at and evaluate Carlin's performance in that game? Do you look at that as an anomaly, or is that
Well, I think you take the full body of work. The guy's a very talented guy. There's nobody that can argue that. He's a very, very talented guy. Man, he's played really well the entire season. He got in a situation that we're a hot hand, and guys that are receivers are pretty good, and I think it was something that was a good lesson for him, and he's responded well to it. That's the key. He came back Sunday, okay, showed me what I did wrong. How can I correct this? How can I do that better? He had the right attitude, because when you play out there on that island, if you play long enough, you're gonna have days that are a little bit different than other days.
Kevin, if somebody were to look at the Ole Miss game and say, this is how we can neutralize their pass rush, what is a checklist of things that you need to do to adjust to that?
Well, I'm not going to say that simply because, they changed what they did.
Right.
So we had to schematically change some things that we do. So if they want to figure it out and watch the film to what we changed, then have at it, but I'm not going to give them a list beforehand.
Yeah, just Josh Holsey, talk about the game he had Saturday.
Well, Josh he's a competitive guy, and he's a wise guy, and that in a positive way, not in a funny wise guy. He's a wise guy. He's got a lot of wisdom. He knows what his abilities are. He knows who he's playing against and what their abilities are, and he knows how to position himself, footwork, technique-wise, to win the down, and he does it repeatedly. Experience sometimes is a good thing.
What do you see when you're watching Ralph Webb on film, and what kind of a challenge does he present?
Well, he's a very good player. I mean, he's relentless in what he does, just relentless. And, he's done it for a long time. I mean, it's not like he's just all of a sudden started doing it. He's strong, he's quick, he's got good vision. He's just, I mean, he is a complete player. There's no doubt.
To go back to Holsey for a minute, Kevin, go back in the spring when he's not able to fully participate, and you're thinking at first he might be a safety because he's coming off a second ACL situation. Once he gets back fully healthy, it's back to corner, but you know a guy who's on his third ACL, he's had 2 surgeries, and there's just certain inherent limitations that could be there, and he doesn't appear to be any worse for the
Yeah.
wear, and just be really, it's kind of remarkable, really, the level of performance he's having. So can you almost believe what you've seen from him this season in light of what you initially thought in March and February?
Well, I think that if I understand exactly what you're asking, when we didn't have a body of work in terms of the spring. We had Dean. We thought we were getting Dennison back. We had Javaris. We had Carlton. So there's 4 guys there plus 2 young guys, or 2 new guys, 22 and then 26. So we thought, well, we'll be able to use him at nickel and safety. Then we get into fall camp, and obviously as the season nears, the scope at corner changed drastically. So rather than putting a young guy out there and seeing, we knew that he had a lot of wisdom in terms of how to play the game. Did I envision, because I'd never been around him, not because I had something to say, hey, he can or can't do it. I probably underestimated just how smart a football player he is. Not that I thought he was not. It was just that guy's like a coach out there. He knows what he needs to do on every snap, and in most instances, he's telling people around him what they're getting ready to run. That's the thing he does so well. I mean, he robbed that route the other day, and he joked around saying, "I'm glad he didn't double move it," but I mean, he knew what was coming, and I think he did a great job of anticipating the throw and breaking on the throw. Wished he'd have scored.
What were some of the more important adjustments you guys made in the second half against Ole Miss?
Kept him out of the end zone. You talking about schematically?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
What did you try to take away, or what did you try to change?
we tried to take away throwing and catching the ball and tackling, getting them on the ground, because it was coming out quick. I mean, obviously they had decided that we're not going to let the pass rush affect this game. So we had to do some things coverage-wise to make him hold the ball, to give him, with what they were running, to make him hold the ball and take the ball, let the thing go down to his second read, his third read, which made him have to squeeze the ball, which then we got several hits on him the second half, several pressures on him, and then and some sacks. But when, at first you sit there and you think, wow, well, that's a lot of yards, and we will never defend. That is a lot of yards. It's a lot of yards. But they threw that thing 64 times. So when you look at it, I think it averaged it out 7.7, 7.8 yards per attempt, which is not, usually when you see the numbers of that, 64 passes, 400 and something yards, then that per attempt or per catch is way, way high, real high. And the longest ball they threw was 28 yards, which is amazing that you throw for that many yards and only the longest ball is 28 yards.
Kevin, you talk about the number of plays you had to defend. How valuable in that situation is it to have to play as many defensive linemen?
Well, it's key because you can keep them fresh, and I think that showed up in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter when we kept them scoreless, and that it started with that up front we were playing a lot of people, and we had a little freshness there. Pardon
Like
me?
the injured guys, he expected all of them to practice this week. How those guys kind of come back this week in practice?
Well, I mean, obviously at this point in time in the year in the SEC West, you're going to come back on Sunday in most weeks with some nicks and bruises, but we're all in a good situation. The only one that's hard to deal with is if somebody has a concussion because of the protocol, and I understand that, agree with it, it's fine. But you can work guys ready and get them to play, with the exception of that, because they can't do anything based on where they're at and all that, so. But, other than everybody else, you just kind of work through it.
Kevin, everybody talks about the run game with Vanderbilt, and rightfully so, but it seems like that quarterback, they're asking him, in games they win, he's been able to make a couple of plays and at least give them a tiny little bit of balance. He's a coach's son. Is there things you've
Yeah,
seen that?
and I know his dad, and yes, he's a smart guy. And they've got, conceptually, they're very good at what they do. They give you a lot of problems, give you a lot of looks, and he does throw the ball very well. And 12, has come in several games and done the same thing. So the backup is capable of doing it too. And they put him in critical situations. So he's throwing the ball effectively.
You hit on a little bit earlier about how a game like that can grab the attention, be able to work on things in practice. Have you seen that motivation in practice from the kids?
Yes,
Going,
and from the
yeah,
leadership.
Yeah.
The leadership was, they, obviously they were happy to win, and there were some really good things in there, really good things. And so, and we accomplished a lot of positives, but there were things that we can do better. And so they did it. They did it, and they weren't pleased with it, when that happens, it makes coaching a whole lot easier. Then that means they've bought into the process of, it's about the next play. It's not about what anybody else does. It's how we do what we do, and the relentless effort, pursuit, physicality, tackling, and then, playing with technique.
You talked about the defensive line, were any of the guys who played really well Saturday night for you?
Well, Carl did, Jeff did, number 3, Marlon did really, really a good job. And Dontavius is always, he doesn't always get the stats, but when you watch the tape, just like the goal line play that Devereaux made. I mean, he disrupted that thing. I mean, he made it change directions twice because he was 3 yards in the backfield with his man. But yet, Devereaux did a great job too, and got the 4th down stop and got the tackle for a loss. But it all started with Dontavius, and so those guys did some good things.
What about the linebackers in that game you're going through?
Well, they were effective in the run game. There were a lot of formations and a lot of balls out quick in which they had to, match things, and they did a good job of quarterbacking it and getting lined up. There were a few things when we made adjustments that made it a little harder on them, and they adapted to that.
Is Devereaux coming on some? It seems like late last year, he started making more of an impact.
Yes, he is. Devereaux is, we laugh about it, it's a joke, but we say, Devereaux is he's a late fall guy because it's cooler. And so, sometimes those big guys, they like the air condition, and we joke about that. It's not a true thing, but that's the joke with Devereaux, and so it's getting cooler and he's coming on.
Seemed like every time you guys went to that Rabbits package against Ole Miss, you were getting some sort of pressure. How successful do you think that group has been this year on the defensive line?
Well, we actually didn't play Rabbits very
Yeah,
much, not at all, simply because you can't get them on and off the field when you're playing soccer. It's hard, and so but they have been good. We were not as effective in 3rd down. That's something that really probably somebody doesn't pay a lot of attention to, but they were 4-4 in the first 2 drives. That's bad for us. But then they were 3, I think, of 12 for the rest of the game, which made a huge difference. And that was directly affected by the guys up front.
Kevin, go back to Don Davis for a second. What do you thought his play the whole for this season?
Who's that?
Don Davis.
Dontavius is just a guy that he knows the defense. He understands how to play. He understands how to play with technique and pad leverage and uses his hands. He's relentless, and he's not selfish. That's the thing that is the key about him, is that, a lot of people want to see how many tackles they had, how many sacks they had, and this guy goes out and creates tackles for other people, creates sacks for other people, and just keeps doing it. There's not a selfish bone in his body. He just plays the game and enjoys playing it at a high level. He epitomizes the guy we talk about and say, just play the next play.
Jay Jacobs was really complimentary of you last night and what you've been able to do with the defense. What's your kind of relationship like been with him, and is it any different than with athletic directors in the past?
That's a first. I never had that question. No, not really. I mean, the relationship is not, every place I've worked, obviously, I've known the athletic director, had a good relationship with them, and so no, that's not any different. And, I mean, it's just kind of when you live in a building 24 hours a day and the athletic director happens to have an office in it, you kind of get to know them, so.